Hey guys, long time no see. What's up guys, it's Dom and I'm here with a new video in this really weirdly echoey room that I'm sure I actually have no idea if you can hear, and an oversized hoodie because I just got home from work. Yeah, so the last time you guys saw me was with my yearly wrap-up thing and like my worst books of 2018. This semester just kind of, it's kicking my ass already. I have 17 credit hours with 2 jobs. Am I regretting my life choices? I don't know, I haven't had an exam yet. I'll get back to you on that. But I was able to read some books. I'm not going to do a January wrap-up because I know I skipped that. I'm just going to combine that with February because all I read in January was the Miss Peregrine trilogy because I was preparing myself for the book that we're going to talk about today, which is A Map of Days, and it's book 4 of that series. So story time about this book. I wasn't expecting this book to come out, as a lot of people probably felt the same, and then he announced this and I was like, oh, I should read it. But I literally forgot everything that happened in book 3 and half of book 2. So January was spent getting ready for this book, and I read that trilogy, and surprisingly, when I say surprisingly, I was just so shocked by how much I forgot about book 2. Book 3 I just remembered nothing but like one thing, but it turns out I remembered it wrong. So I will get to that. But I don't know if this is going to be a review or just like a book talk or just a ramble, because I don't want to spoil anything. But I will tell you my likes and dislikes about this book, and we're going to get to it. So for a little summary of this novel, this takes place right at the end of Library of Souls. The Peculiars and Jacob are in America right now, and then they get this hidden like message kind of thing from Jacob's grandfather, Abe, and then they go on this big, huge adventure across America. But the thing is, American Peculiars are a lot less tame than the European ones. There's no Imbrans, there's like no organization, stresses them out. And because they're doing some mission thing and their mission's freaking them out. That's all I can say without spoiling this. So we're gonna get straight to what I do like first. And what I like, especially as a photographer, is I love looking at all these photos. Some of these photos freak me out, and it really makes me wonder how RANSOM found them. And they're also in color for this novel, so you could tell times are changing, because the past 3 novels did take place technically in the past when you know what a time loop is. So it makes sense that those are black and white. These are in color because it is present day. Spoiler alert. I'm just gonna like raise my hands whenever there's a spoiler, so keep skipping until my hand is down. But yeah, Library of Souls, they find out that when the loop collapsed, their age went back to what they like originally were, if that made any sense. So like, you know, Emma was like 80 something years old, but now that the loop collapsed, like she was like, her body was back at 16. So they can go walk outside the loop. There they are with Jacob traveling in the present. What I also liked about this novel is all the nostalgia it brought back for me, because I really, really love these characters, even though I forgot about a few of them. I loved Fiona the best, but she's the one that I remembered wrong information about, so I was very upset when I came across book 3 and this book. But at least they mentioned her, and it's fine. Also, what else I liked about this book is just the difference of American Peculiars versus England, I guess, just because those were the ones represented the most in the other 3 books. Because as we know, as a society, America and England are vastly different. I mean, even throughout America, it's going to be different. Eastern and Western United States, completely different. North, South, different. Even like within the city of Chicago, I could tell you as a northern Chicagoan, I do live a different style than the people in the south side of Chicago. Stuff like that. So it was very interesting to see that. And I do like how America is more reckless, because in the first 3 books, like, it's very, very confined. They rely on the adults a lot, which makes sense because they are children, but it, you know, as a freeing adult and as a teenager who kind of hated listening to adults, because I was that teenager. Wasn't a bad kid by any means, but authority was like a no, because I was a dumbass. But you know, it's nice to see these kids unwind in America. I loved the untameness in America. It read like America, if you guys understand what that means. I don't know. Something I like better in this novel than the first 3 was characterization. I do think the characterization in this novel is stronger because in the other novels, like, the characters were there, but it was still hard to tell them apart. And in this one, we do get to see more of Miss Peregrine, and I find out more about Jacob in this novel. Emma's as sassy as always. Enoch is fucking annoying and as sassy as always. But then you get to learn more about Bronwyn. I don't know. Millard's still a fucking nerd. Horace is still a pussy. Hugh, he's debatable. He's one of the ones where it's not much. Characterization was, like, yeah, was a lot better. And plus, you get to see some other past characters, like Sharon comes back. I also like the plot of this novel kind of more than the original trilogy, because yes, in the original trilogy they had, like, missions, but it was about saving people. It wasn't assigned to them. They did it because they were in, like, a do-or-die situation, whereas this one, they're like, you know what, we're gonna break authority. It was nice to see, because, yeah, Miss Peregrine is kind of strangling. I think I would freak if someone like her was telling me what to do all the time. So it's kind of nice to see these kids being like, fuck it, and going on an adventure together. And plus, they didn't just stay in one place. They were able to see lots of other parts of America, and you could tell RANSOM RIGGS really did his research with these parts too, because they went from Florida to Georgia and eventually New York, and, like, a lot of info was in it, and it didn't just say, like, oh, I went on Google Maps and looked at it. Like, maybe RANSOM RIGGS went there, maybe not, I don't know, but it read like he did and that he knew what he was talking about when describing these areas. This book also involves, like, secret missions, which I really, really love, and I'm going to leave that point at that, because then I will end up spoiling it if I keep rambling. There are a few, like, caveats to this book. As much as I did love it, I do have some qualms that, like, didn't bother me when I initially set the book down, but then when you think about it, that's when it comes to mind. I'm going to go back to characterization for this, because yes, although it's gotten better, I still think RANSOM RIGGS has a lot to work on for characterization, because you get the feel of these characters more, but I still feel like they're held at arm's length. And yes, you know more about Jacob, but I know if you go through my other reviews on Goodreads, it doesn't read like that Jacob is there. It feels like he is on the outside of what's going on and just narrating it, and that he's not a part of it at all. It's not as bad the first 3 novels in this one, but, like, I still felt it. It was hard for me to believe that he was physically there experiencing this, and not just reading a storybook to us. Another thing that kind of bothers me with this entire series, it wasn't just this book, it was like this entire series, is that it reads like RANSOM RIGGS is just writing as he goes and not really thinking about foreshadowing, which is the way he writes these novels. It does make sense to me, because to my understanding, he finds pictures and kind of writes around them, and that's how he bases his plot. I mean, if I'm wrong, then, like, correct me. I probably am wrong. I know for, like, some plot points he does make the plot and find pictures to relate to that, but then there's some stuff that get inspired by photos, and that is how it reads, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up in this novel that could have been easily foreshadowed in the first 3 novels but never were. Like, for example, Abe's bunker, how that could have had a lot of foreshadowing going on. And also, the password to the bunker was a nickname he had for Jacob, but in Polish. And Jacob's like, oh, he used to call me that all the time. But there was no mention of that in the first 3 novels. And I wish there would have been a mention of it. And there are a few times where Jacob would say, oh, I used to do this all the time. Or that happened all the time. Or I was just thinking about it. But, like, he wasn't. We were never shown that he used to do whatever it was all the time. And I know in order to fix that problem, like, a lot of it was put in just parentheses. But still, like, it broke the flow of the story, and that's, I don't know, you know, like how Star Wars, there's a lot of weird plot holes, but that's because if you actually look up what happened with Star Wars, they wrote that series as they went. They didn't have an end goal in mind. Like, for example, the whole, like, Luke and Leia kissing, they weren't siblings in the script of episode 4. It wasn't until, like, episode 5 or 6 where they were like, you know what would be funny if they were siblings. Same thing with the whole plot twist with Darth Vader. From episode, like, 4 and 5, he wasn't supposed to be Luke's father. It wasn't until they were writing episode 6 that would be like, you know what would be a shocked value? If he was the father. I mean, it's not as obvious in this novel, but that's just how it reads, and it really broke some of the flow for me, which is upsetting, but it can easily be fixed. I also thought the plot of this novel took a very, very long time to introduce. I was 100 pages in when they finally introduced what was happening with this plot. Like, this book is a brick, so I understand he has room to explore the plot, and, like, Jacob's reunited with his friends again. Like, of course you're going to need a few moments for them to be reunited. And in the present day, these kids went from the 1940s to the present day. They're confused. You need to show that. I get it. But it shouldn't take you 100 pages to introduce what the hell's happening. And it was slow going. For the first 3 chapters, I was like, okay, it's just Jacob talking to his friends, going shopping for clothes, like, what's the actual point of this novel? The problem I have with all these novels is the number of characters that get introduced. I personally think RANSOM RIGGS puts way too many because he makes them so interesting and then never mentions them again. Like, in book 2, I really like the telekinesis. Wow. It's been a day, guys. Can't really talk. But in book 2, I really like the telekinesis girl, Melina, and I did like the twins, Joel and Peter and Joel. They're mentioned for like a line in book 3, and then we never see them again. There's no mention of them remembering them in book 4, so he just dropped those characters off the face of the earth, and they had great peculiarities. And in this novel, he was constantly introducing people, and some of them weren't important. I think if a character is not important, to just like not give them a name, just kind of reference them here and there by what they look like. But these people had names, and then were never brought up again, even though they were made out to be important. And why? It's just, when you introduce so many people like that, because at one point, just within 2 pages, 6 people, what they looked like, what their peculiarities were, blah blah blah, were just introduced. And it was a lot to keep up with. When you introduce so many characters like that, it's so hard to just keep them in line and for people to separate them. Which leads into my next point about the amount of peculiar children that Miss Peregrine takes care of. I know it's like she's like a head mistress and like a nanny for orphan kids, so having a lot of kids there would make sense. But they're not always together all the time, and I think it's because in book 1 he introduced way too many for a plot to flow well, and then he kind of just drops them off. Like in book 2, Fiona and Claire have nothing to do with the plot because Claire got sick, so Fiona and Claire stayed back. And I think, well, I don't think, but like, I guess I could go on with my point. In book 3, it's literally just Jacob and Emma and everyone else is gone. But then in book 4, Fiona's not there. Claire, Horace, and Hugh are like in the book. Oh, and Olive. But they stay behind from this mission. So throughout this whole book, it's just Jacob, Emma, Bronwyn, Millard, and Enoch. Just 5 characters out of all the main ones that were introduced, and I feel like it just comes off as him realizing he introduced way too many people, so he's giving these characters an excuse to stay back, so he has an excuse not to write about multiple people. Because I understand it's a problem, but that also leads to what, like, characterization. Because there's so many people, it is hard to put them off. Like Enoch, right away you knew he was sassy. Same with Emma, but like a different sassy. Bronwyn, I never took for a wimp, like personality-wise. I mean, I understand like she's a very loving person and a maternal person. All the little kids turn to her. But I didn't realize she was kind of dim-witted until this book. At one point, she pointed out that Enoch was being sarcastic, and he's like, "I'm so proud of you. You're finally getting it." As if we saw that before, but we never did see that before. And I remember the comment saying, Miller told her, like, hey, he's being sarcastic, but she said, but he promised he wasn't going to be, even though he said it in a sarcastic voice. And it's like, why are you dim-witted now when you were never dim-witted before? And Olive, yeah, she's a cute little girl, but that's it. I can't really tell you more about her. Hugh, I know next to nothing about, other than the moment he saved them in book 2. Claire, you know nothing about, other than that she's the youngest. Like, there's just no exploration of these characters, and I think it's because he did introduce way too many. Also, a character I would like to see more of is Miss Peregrine. I mean, it's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Like, that was the title of the first book, but then she was just never mentioned again, hardly. They just wanted to save her, but she's not, like, physically there in the story. So even for her, you don't get to know a lot. And then, unfortunately, a lot of how you get to know her is through her dialogue and not so much narration. You know by her dialogue that she's like the sassy teacher with a good head on her shoulders, I guess, until the end, which is another thing. This is not a bad thing. This is a sign of good writing. Miss Peregrine made me so angry at the end of the novel, but in a way where, not in a badly written way. It was in a greatly, is that even a word? It was in like a good way of writing it, but she was just so angry. Like, her as a character kind of like pisses me off too, because she doesn't want to give these kids any freedom. And I know at one point Emma's like, we're not children anymore, and she said, but yes you are, you proved that today. But these kids are, now that their bodies have rewind, they're almost 18. At 16 years old, a lot was expected from me, and I was expected to be like mature, and because I was almost an adult, that was like used against me a lot. So it did piss me off that she's treating these people like they're like 5 almost. And another thing that pissed me off at the end was all his friends, all of Jacob's friends, just being annoying, and I can't explain why they're annoying because that would like spoil something. And I'm just, oh, I was so mad at them, especially Emma and Enoch. They both said something to Jacob that made me want to punch him in the face. But a good thing about the ending is that it made me want to read book 5 so bad. You cannot just leave me hanging here and have no announcement about book 5. I'm dying, guys. I need book 5. So I hope you enjoyed this video that I could have called shortest, but I just looked at the time frame on my camera and it was not short because I can't stop talking apparently. Apparently I like hearing the sound of my own voice. But I will leave it at that. I think I'm going to call this book talk because if this was a review, it was a shit one. It was very... very, very rusty at this because I just haven't talked to a camera in a while. I also did not plan out this review. This is Freeverse because I'm doing this on limited time. Yeah, girls got a lot to do this weekend. I hope you enjoy this. Look forward to another college bookshelf video because my bookshelf has changed since I first made it. Plus, it's just a good video to make. And look out for my travel videos that will eventually come out. Should have been fucking done before now, but I'm still working on New Zealand because I'm slow. Follow me on Instagram where you can see all my travel photography, at Dom the Book Traveler. Follow me on Twitter. I hardly use it, but it's at Dom the Book Thief. I use it to read about politics and when all my bands are coming out with new music. That's all my social media. Also follow me on Goodreads so we can look at each other's books and stalk each other and stalk what we're all reading. And yeah, I'm gonna go. See you guys later. Ciao, tutti.